One December night in 1993, a 16-year-old boy picks up the phone on the 17th floor of the Tequendama residences in Bogota. And on the other end, he hears gunfire. It's his father. His father has just died on the rooftop of a house in Medellin. And this boy, with the body of the most wanted man on the planet still warm, lifts the receiver, looks into a television camera, and says a sentence he will deny for the rest of his life. What you're about to discover in the next few minutes is that the official story has lied to you. One of Pablo Escobar's sons has spent 25 years in hiding, and he isn't who you think. Another sells t-shirts printed with his father's fingerprint and charges $20,000 per lecture. And there's a third one, on an estate in Mallorca, who claims to hold a secret code that would lead to the kingpin's last hidden treasure. 3 lives, 3 versions, a single surname. Let's take this one piece at a time because each of them carries his own private hell. Juan Sebastián Marroquín, the son who chose his own name. He was born on February 24, 1977 in Medellin, and for the first 16 years of his life, his name was Juan Pablo Escobar Henao. The name that appears today on his Argentine passport, Juan Sebastián Marroquín Santos, was chosen in less than 10 minutes, with a rushed official standing beside him flipping through a Bogota phone book. Maroquin because it sounded neutral, Sebastian because he liked it, Santos because his mother chose that surname. The Colombian authorities approved the change in 1994 officially for security reasons. What the world didn't know is that the first fake passport identity was picked while watching a soap opera. Yes, a soap opera. Café con Aroma de Mujer was on the air at the time, and the family decided to use that story as a cover, posing as quiet coffee growers from Colombia's coffee region arriving in Argentina to start from scratch. But before Argentina, there was a brief, brutal hell. After his father died, 17 countries denied them asylum, one after another. Germany sent them back in less than 48 hours. Mozambique took them in for a couple of days and then expelled them, because the country had just come out of a civil war and there wasn't even food. They arrived at the Bowen Suite Hotel in Buenos Aires on December 24, 1994 at 3 in the morning on a tourist visa, the only thing a single country on the entire planet was willing to give them. Argentina asked them for 3 months of paperwork, nothing more. And in that diplomatic silence, they built a new life, 5 years of calm. Until November 1999, when Commissioner Jorge Elfino Palacios and 15 agents broke down the door of the 17th floor apartment in the building at Jaramillo Street 2010 in the Núñez neighborhood. Maroquin was 22 years old. He ended up behind bars, 15 months in prison. His mother, 17. They were charged with document forgery and with moving cartel money. It was rumored they had $500 million to launder, but the case collapsed because the prosecutors ended up behind bars before they did. And now comes what few people tell you. Maroquin isn't just any repentant son. He's a licensed architect from the University of Palermo. He has his own firm called Box Arquitectura Latinoamericana, with a motto that says it all: without borders, there are no enemies. He designed a 3,000 square meter mansion in Colombia and a 1,000 square meter one in Argentina. He designed a wellness and water therapy center. But pay attention, because for years he wouldn't sign his own projects. He said so himself in a 2017 interview with the Architect's newspaper. He worked on buildings, and in the publications anyone but him would appear. Pure professional discrimination. And here's where the story gets even stranger. In the very apartment where he lives with his wife Maria Angeles Sarmiento, a Mexican woman raised in Colombia who paints, the clothing brand Escobar Henao also operates. He prints authentic documents belonging to his father onto t-shirts. The ID card, the savings book, the credit cards, the signature, the fingerprint, a 1973 notarized statement listing Pablo Escobar as having no criminal record. T-shirts from $60 to $95. Jeans at $140. 10,000 garments sold in the United States, Mexico, Guatemala, Ecuador, Spain, and Austria. Do you know where it was never sold? in Colombia, out of respect for the victims, according to him. 3 times he tried to register the brand Pablo Escobar in patent offices, and the victims took him to court, comparing it to selling Hitler t-shirts. All 3 times he lost. He has a son. His name is Juan Emilio Escobar. He's the kingpin's only acknowledged grandson. In December 2023, Maroquin posted on Instagram a handwritten letter in blue ink that his father had left him one Valentine's Day when he was little. "To my son Juan," it read, "Problems are a challenge, and absence strengthens our friendship and our love." Maroquin said that he now says those exact same words to his own son. Yes, he's raising a grandson of the most wanted kingpin in history with the letters his father wrote him while hiding out in a safe house. Read that again, slowly. Let's talk about his intellectual output. 3 published books. Pablo Escobar, My Father, in 2014. Pablo Escobar and Fragante, What My Father Never Told Me, in 2016, in which he puts forward a thesis that shook all of Colombia, that his father took his own life by his own hand on that Medellin rooftop, that he was not taken out by the police. And a 3rd compilation book. They've been translated into 15 languages. The English edition was released by a New York publisher. In 2009, he was the central figure of the documentary Sins of My Father, directed by the Argentine Nicolas Entel. It cost $750,000. It took Maroquin 6 months to be convinced. He set 2 conditions to take part: that the title not carry the name Pablo Escobar, and that his sister not appear on screen under any circumstances. The documentary won awards at Sundance in Miami and Berlin and was screened at the UN headquarters on the International Day of Peace. Why was it so important? Because there, for the first time in 30 years, the executioner's son sat down to talk with the children of the victims. With Rodrigo Lara Restrepo, son of the justice minister whose life was taken on Pablo's orders on April 30th, 1984. With Carlos Fernando, Claudio, and Juan Manuel Galán, sons of the presidential candidate whose life was taken on August 18th, 1989 in a public square. Maroquin wrote them a letter on February 22nd, 2008. The summit with the Galán family took place on October 28th of that year, in a hotel in northern Bogotá. And here's the detail almost no one knows. When he lived in Switzerland, Rodrigo Lara Jr. discovered at the age of 12 that a boy at his boarding school was named Escobar, and he planned to take him out during the night. The plan was never carried out. 30 years later, they reconciled on camera with Pope Francis as a witness in Cartagena in 2017. And here comes another twist. Because while he sells the world the image of the redeemed son, in Argentina he's under investigation. In 2017 and 2018, federal judge Nestor Barral charged him with alleged money laundering alongside his mother in a real estate operation in the Pilar area. They speak of $10 to $15 million moved in 2008, a commission of 4.5%, and a seizure of $1,200,000. Minister Patricia Bullrich confirmed it in a press conference. They even raided an iconic bar the family used as a meeting point across from the Argentine Congress called Los Angelitos. The case today is on hold. There's no conviction, but there's no acquittal either. And that, in his world, is no small detail. His social media is another chapter. His main Instagram was blocked in October 2021 for posting photos of his father. And Narcos does have its properly verified profile, he himself denounced, outraged. Today he keeps a secondary account with barely 600 followers. On Twitter, by contrast, he's still active under the name Sebastián Marroquín, with 45,000 followers and a label that reads Peace Ambassador of the World Peace Organization. Maroquin has been giving lectures for more than 25 years. He once gathered 6,200 young people at a single talk. His signature talk is called A Story Not to Be Repeated. He's been in Mexico, Chile, Serbia, Madrid, and occasionally in Colombia. He charges between $10,000 and $25,000 per event. But hold on to this number, because now comes the detail that hurts the most. Maroquin has returned to Colombia only twice since he fled. Twice. The first was in 2008 for that meeting with the Galan family. The second in 2017 for Cartagena with the Pope. Never, not once, has he managed to enter Hacienda Nápoles, the 7,700,000 square meters his father built as a kingdom. He tried twice. Both times he was turned away. Today it's a public park managed by the municipality of Puerto Triunfo, and the owner's son can't get in. In May 2025, he gave a devastating interview to a podcast called The B-Side of Crime with Melo Montoya. He attacked the series El Patrón del Mal, and he attacked Narcos. He said word for word that you can't tell whether you're watching El Patrón del Mal or Betty La Fea. But right there he confessed something he had maintained for 20 years and could no longer maintain. The famous story of the $2 million burned, that legendary night in a house in the mountains of Medellin in which his father supposedly set fire to stacks of bills so Manuela wouldn't freeze to death. The story he himself told to Don Juan magazine. The story Popeye repeated. The story that built a career over 20 years in books, podcasts, and documentaries. Well, in May 2025, he said it wasn't true. It's a formula for glorifying the activity of criminal organizations. And in that same podcast, he knocked down another giant legend, that his father had hidden stashes. He wasn't one for hiding stashes, he spent far more than came in. And now a detail that makes your hair stand on end. When he was barely 15, Colombian intelligence services already had a file open against Juan Pablo. A formal case with his name listed as a suspect over the alleged theft of a Ferrari Testarossa from the Galeano brothers and, pay attention, as an accomplice in the death of Captain Fernando Posada. 15 years old, state intelligence already saw him as a potential danger. Why? Because he was Pablo's son, for nothing more than that. And that explains something he revealed later. At 15, he wore a bulletproof vest under his school uniform, went to class with armed bodyguards, and received threats on his life every week. And he still earned the grades to get into university. And here comes another key block, the real escape, because the version you know is the Hollywood version. The true one went like this. On November 27, 1993, 5 days before his father was taken out, they boarded a Lufthansa flight bound for Frankfurt. Their final destination was Mainz, where a religious community had agreed to take them in. But when they landed, Helmut Kohl's German government turned them away. No discussion. 48 hours later, they were back in Bogota, locked inside the Tequendama residences, an army-run hotel, watched around the clock. And here something happens that history still debates. The calls Pablo made from his hideout to his family at Tequendama, according to the technicians on the operation, helped triangulate his location. The voice of a son, the voice of a wife, and a tracking team listening on the other side. On December 2nd, 1993, one day after Pablo turned 44, they took him out. But before that, according to forensic data, Maroquin received that last call. That last conversation in which his father told him, according to him, "I'll only be calling you from heaven now." And minutes later, Maroquin said on national television to journalist Yamid Amat, "I want to personally make it very clear that I will not avenge my father's death, because now the only thing that concerns me is the future of my suffering family." The line was recorded for history, but the real line, the one he said 2 minutes earlier in private, was a different one. He confessed it himself years later. The first thing that came out of him was, "I'm going to finish off every last one of those sons of bitches." His mother, as she tells it in her own book, covered his mouth and whispered, "If you say that, tomorrow your sister is dead." And so he said the other line, the public one. That was the dividing line between the 16-year-old boy who almost became what the world expected of him, and the 49-year-old man who today gives lectures against the culture that glorifies these criminal organizations. In June 2025, at a Congress in Madrid, he dropped the line that echoed everywhere. The right thing would be to declare peace on substances. He spoke of regulation, education, and prevention. And a few days earlier, when a 15-year-old attacked Senator Miguel Uribe Turbay in Bogota, Maroquin posted a message calling for justice and not revenge, recalling that his father's cartel had kidnapped Diana Turbe, the senator's mother, in 1990. And I'll close his part with a detail that makes your hair stand on end. In April 2026, a miniseries premiered called Dear Killer Nannies Raised by Hitmen, with Maroquin providing the voiceover. He tells of his flight to Mozambique. He tells of the negotiations with the Cali cartel. He tells how the family built its identity drawing inspiration from a soap opera. And he tells something that, until then, he had kept quiet. One of his aunts kept money his father had left for them. But at least Maroquin shows his face. His sister did something far more extreme, something no kingpin's child had ever done before. And what comes next explains why the family has a golden rule that no one has ever managed to break. Manuela Escobar Henao, the princess who decided to disappear. Her legal name today is Juana Manuela Maroquin Santos, and everything that is documented about her life fits into less than 2 pages. Let's start at the beginning. Manuela was born on May 25, 1984 at the Paitilla Hospital in Panama City at 12:45 in the afternoon. Her mother was hiding there under the personal protection of Manuel Antonio Noriega, the Panamanian dictator. It was barely a month after her father ordered that Justice Minister Lara Bonilla have his life taken in the middle of the street. She holds an active Panamanian ID, number 8775131, which would legally allow her even to apply for Panamanian citizenship today. But she has never done it. Because Manuela doesn't want to exist. When she was 3 years old in January 1988, members of the Cali cartel attacked the Monaco Tower where they lived, a first car bomb in the war between cartels. Manuela was left with a permanent hearing problem in one of her ears. That was the first mark. The second came 5 years later when a squad called Los Pepes blew up with 200 kilos of dynamite, the estate her father had named in her honor, La Manuela, at the Peñol Guatapé Reservoir. It was March 20th, 1993. Manuela was 8 years old and watched on television as the place where she had learned to ride horses turned to rubble. And here's the first counterintuitive detail you need to hear twice. The legend says her father had a fake horn attached to a horse to give her a unicorn for her 5th birthday, and that the animal died of infection. The story was spread by Popeye in interviews and repeated by Maroquin in that Don Juan interview. But her mother debunked it in her 2018 book with a photo included. The photo shows Manuela riding an ordinary mare at Hacienda Nápoles on her 5th birthday in 1989. The mare in a black foal. No horns, no unicorns, no dead animals. The entire story was an invention, and now see what Manuela's true hell really was. When they arrived in Argentina with false identities, she was 10 years old. She made friends. She learned to take the bus to school. She started singing. The then Secretary of Culture of Buenos Aires, the singer-songwriter Piero, wanted to bring her into a children's choir because her voice surprised him. Picture it. The daughter of the most wanted kingpin in history about to sing in a choir of Buenos Aires children without anyone knowing who she was. But everything shattered in November 1999. The police raided the house. They arrested her mother. They arrested her brother. And Manuela at 15 was left alone. She had to leave school, stop going out, stop singing, stop existing. Since then, she has never given a single interview. Never. Her mother confessed to a Spanish newspaper. My daughter Juana still lives paralyzed. She has been unable to emerge from the shock of the pain this war left on this family, because horror was with her from the time she was in my womb. Sadly, to this day, she feels she has no place in this world. The writer José Alejandro Castaño wrote a book titled Close Your Eyes, Princess, in which he revealed that Manuela has attempted to take her own life. She reportedly lives with her brother and sister-in-law in Buenos Aires under constant care. She has no Instagram, no Twitter, no Facebook. And there is a golden rule in the family that no journalist has managed to break in 25 years. You don't ask about Manuela. Maroquin made it clear on Instagram, "My sister is not a public person. She enjoys her privacy and the privilege of leading a normal life. She owes nothing to anyone and lives peacefully around us and around those who love her. But wait, because Manuela didn't escape the financial weight of the surname. In December 2023, Colombia's Council of State denied her an appeal against the tax authority. She had been fined 103,681,000 Colombian pesos for failing to declare assets her father had put in her name when she was 3 years old. Her lawyers argued that those assets had already been subject to asset forfeiture. The Colombian courts replied, word for word, appeal without merit, and as if something were still missing, in November 2025, the Colombian authorities auctioned off what remained of the La Manuela estate, the one bearing her name, for 7,700 million pesos. The buyer was not revealed, another inheritance that evaporates. Her father, Pablo, used to call her my little ballerina. She always carried a music box with a ballerina inside. Her aunt Luz Maria Escobar confessed this on a podcast. He made Manuela believe the tooth fairy left her briefcases full of dollars for every baby tooth she lost. He would repeat this line whenever they had to flee a raid. "We're the little mice, the cats are coming." And the daughter he called ballerina and princess has now spent 25 years without letting herself be seen. Some sources speak of a pet products business, others of a rural hotel called El Nido del Condor. But none of that is confirmed by serious media. What is confirmed is the saddest part, that she's still alive, that she's still silent, and that she prefers not to be seen. But there is one episode almost no one talks about, and it defines her entire life, because Manuela technically was the only one who escaped prison in 1999. When the Argentine police broke down the door of the 17th floor that November night, she was 15. They arrested her mother. They arrested her brother. They left her outside because she was a minor. 15 years old, alone, in a country that had just discovered who she was. She spent those months in friends' houses, without understanding what was happening to her mother, without understanding what was happening to her brother, without understanding why a police officer had looked her in the eyes and said, according to a later interview with her aunt, "Kid, you knew it all, didn't you?" She knew it all. A girl of 15, with a false identity, with a false name, with a father she'd been told was a coffee businessman. And from one day to the next, everyone in Buenos Aires knew she was Pablo Escobar's daughter. Do you know how Manuela responded? By stopping eating. The psychologist José Alejandro Castaño documented that she developed serious eating disorders, deep depressive episodes, and at least 2 serious attempts to take her own life between the ages of 16 and 22. Her brother confirmed it off the record to several journalists. The family rule of never speaking about her was born precisely there, not out of privacy, out of survival. Any public mention of Manuela would trigger an episode. Any headline with her name would send her to bed for days. Any interview in which she appeared in the background ended with emergency psychiatric consultations. And that's why when Maroquin signed the contract for the documentary Sins of My Father in 2008, he demanded in writing that his sister not appear for a single second. Not a photo, not a mention, not an echo. And it was honored. In 92 minutes of film, Manuela doesn't exist. She's a ghost. And that's exactly what she had wanted to be since 1999. There's an additional detail that's little known. In the 1988 Monaco attack, Manuela was barely 3 years old. The explosion threw her against a wall. Her hearing problem isn't only in one ear. According to Castaño's book, she has also carried panic episodes around loud noises ever since. Thunder, New Year's firecrackers, ambulance sirens. Any of those sounds makes her tremble as if she were 3 years old again. Imagine living in Buenos Aires, a noisy city with that phobia. Imagine your birthday falling on May 25th, right in the middle of an Argentine national holiday with parades, fireworks, and the whole neighborhood celebrating. Imagine spending your birthday hidden in a room with headphones on. That's Manuela. That is, as far as the world knows, the silent routine of the most invisible daughter of the most visible kingpin in history. Her only 3 verifiable public photos as an adult are stolen. one on a beach in Mar del Plata in 2014 taken by an Argentine paparazzo, which the family's legal team managed to pull off the internet within hours. Another at the exit of a venue in Palermo in 2017 also erased from the digital record. And a third, viral on TikTok in 2024, which circulated for barely 48 hours before being silenced with an image rights claim. 3 photos in 25 years. 0 interviews, 0 statements, 0 social media. The daughter of the man who generated 40,000 headlines a year for a decade doesn't exist on the internet, and that in 2026 is almost as hard as having been the king of the cartel. And now get ready. There's a third son, a son the Escobar family denies. He lives in Mallorca, and he swears he holds a secret code his father left before dying. A code that would lead to the kingpin's last treasure. Philip Whitcomb, the third son. No one wants to acknowledge. And now comes the character who breaks the entire official narrative, because the Escobar Henao family has always sworn that Pablo had only 2 children. But there's an Englishman now around 60 years old who paints hyper-realist canvases on an estate in Mallorca in the municipality of Santanyí and claims to be the first son, the secret firstborn. His current name is Philip Whitcomb. His original name, according to him, was Roberto Sendoya Escobar. His version is this. Pablo at 16 got a 14-year-old girl named Maria Luisa Sendoya pregnant. She died in a shootout during an undercover operation in 1965. He was rescued from the crib. He was adopted by Patrick Whitcomb, a British MI6 agent who in Colombia passed himself off as an executive at a company that printed banknotes. Patrick raised him in Bogotá among chauffeurs, bodyguards, and gifts from the Colombian president. He took him every New Year to hotels in Medellin to meet Pablo in visits justified as friendship. At 9 years old, he was sent to a boarding school in England. In 1989, now 24 years old, his adoptive father told him the truth. He showed him the baptism certificate, the adoption certificate, documents listing the names Roberto Sendoya Escobar, Maria Luisa Sendoya, and Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria. He asked him to shave off his mustache for safety. 4 years later, in 1993, both men died. Patrick from motor neuron disease in January, Pablo in December. And before dying, Patrick handed him a paper with a code that, according to Philip, leads to gold, jewels, properties, and bullion that Pablo had hidden in 4 or 5 places around the planet. A code with, he claims, Masonic connotations. But there's more. In August 2020, Philip gave an interview to the BBC recounting a detail no one had ever heard before. He said that when he was 7 years old on one of those New Year visits in Medellin, Pablo embraced him and whispered something in his ear in Spanish that he didn't understand at the time. Philip didn't speak Spanish. 30 years later, he had the sentence translated. It said, "You are mine, even if you can never say it." Philip says that embrace left physical marks, bruises on his arms. It was an embrace too tight for a child, and an embrace too long for a courtesy visit. His adoptive father, Patrick, watched the scene from the other end of the room without intervening. Afterward, he told him in the car on the way back, "Remember this day." Philip remembered it, and he wrote it in his book. His current life is the absolute negation of his supposed father's legacy. He lives on an estate in Santanyí in the south of Mallorca with his second wife, Julie. He paints hyper-realist canvases that sell for thousands of pounds sterling. He defines himself as an artistic descendant of the Reynolds family, founders of Britain's Royal Academy of Arts. He doesn't drink. He doesn't smoke. He doesn't go to parties. His routine is painting in the morning, a walk through the countryside at midday, reading in the afternoon. The exact antithesis of the man he says is his biological father. And even so, he begins every morning by looking at a painting he himself made, a black and white hyper-realist portrait of Pablo Escobar, hanging in his studio. A portrait no acknowledged son of the kingpin would dare hang in his own home. He published a book in August 2020 titled Son of Escobar, the Firstborn. He gave interviews to the BBC, to the Sunday Post, to the Irish News. He announced a sequel he'll call The Secret of the Lost Millions. But pay attention. There's no DNA proof, only adoption documents, only a baptism certificate. And Maroquin's response was scathing. There are dozens of people who claim to be Pablo Escobar's children, which isn't true. He's a fraud. He only has a story of rumors to tell, completely detached from reality. Maroquin added that he had heard his father confess that he had forced one of his mistresses to have an abortion so there would be no children outside the marriage. And Philip says he will never return to Colombia. It's very dangerous and there's nothing there for me. They've turned me into an Englishman. And here comes the most unsettling part of all. That after 33 years of searching for the answer, after 15 languages, 200 lectures, thousands of pages written, we still don't know the most basic thing. How large was the real fortune? Forbes estimates $30 billion. The criminal organization brought in $22 billion a year. But in the end, according to Popeye, he was left with barely $20 million in cash. Maroquin put it in 2025 with a devastating line. You don't change a country's constitution or nearly take down the entire police force for pocket change. That costs a fortune. Everyone got paid, and very well. The whole fortune evaporated in bribes, in lawyers, in the war against the state, in the war against the Cali Cartel. 4,000 official victims attributed to the Medellin Cartel, the siege of the Palace of Justice. The Avianca flight with 110 people aboard taken out in mid-air, the kidnapping of Diana Turbay, the death of Lara Bonilla, the death of Galan, the death of Bernardo Jaramillo, the death of Carlos Pizarro, and in the end, 2 sons. 3, if you believe Philip. Carrying a surname none of them chose, Maroquin summed it up in a Linea Directa interview. The world expected me to be Pablo Escobar 2.0. He wasn't. Maybe that's the greatest possible revenge, or maybe not. Because there's something none of them can hide. Hold on to this last detail. In May 2026, the Argentine authorities are still investigating him. The money laundering case has not been closed. The Escobar Henao brand is still producing. The sister is still invisible. The son still says on Twitter that he's a peace ambassador. And in Mallorca, a man paints canvases and claims to hold a secret code that would lead to a hidden treasure. 3 lives, 3 versions, and a single surname weighing 33 years later as if it were the very first day. Which of the 3 do you believe? If you made it this far, subscribe to the channel and let me know in the comments.